Commander Vex'lorr of the Galactic Confederation stared at his view screen with all four of his eyes twitching simultaneously. "You have got to be joking," he muttered, antennae drooping in disbelief. The ship's AI responded in its annoyingly cheerful tone. "No joke detected in my previous statement, Commander." "It was a figure of speech, computer," Vex'lorr snapped. "Are you absolutely certain that a single human spacecraft has penetrated our defensive perimeter around Jupiter's moon Europa?" "Affirmative, Commander." "The craft appears to be unconventional. Scans indicate it is constructed primarily from repurposed commercial materials. The propulsion system appears to be a modified nuclear thermal rocket using, is this correct, water as reaction mass?" Vex'lorr groaned, his scaled skin flushing purple with stress. "So some primitive human cobbled together a spaceship in their backyard and somehow made it past our cloaked sentinel drones? Impossible." "Yet factual," the computer replied. "The craft is currently on approach to our research station. Communications attempted but unsuccessful. The human is broadcasting something called Florida-Georgia line at maximum volume." "Florida-Georgia line?" Vex'lorr's translator implant struggled with the concept. "Is this some sort of territorial demarcation?" "Unknown. Analysis suggests it may be a form of auditory torture device." Vex'lorr slammed a tentacle onto the command console. It scrambled the diplomatic team. "I want our first contact specialist suited up and ready in 5 minutes. And someone get me Admiral's loop on the quantum communicator." This is precisely the scenario we've been dreading since we discovered these humans. The bridge erupted into frantic activity as crew members rushed to their stations. Junior Officer Plex Tal approached, her exoskeleton clicking nervously. "Sir, preliminary analysis of the human craft shows it's labeled HFY Europa Express. The pilot appears to be wearing something called a cowboy hat while consuming a beverage called Bud Light." Vex'lorr felt a migraine coming on. He'd studied Earth cultures extensively during his xenoanthropology rotation, and this sounded suspiciously like the feared Florida man subspecies they'd been warned about. "Tactical assessment?" he barked. Plex Tal consulted her data pad. "The craft poses no conventional military threat, sir. It's armed with fishing harpoons and something called fireworks." "Mating displays?" Vex'lorr wondered aloud. "Unknown, sir. But there appears to be a large quadruped mammal aboard as well. Earth classification, Alligator. Or an apex predator. So this is a hunter-killer team." Vex'lorr's panic gland started secreting alarm pheromones, battle stations. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Drell, "we're receiving a transmission from the human craft." On screen, Vex'lorr ordered, straightening his ceremonial cape. A first contact with humans wasn't supposed to happen for another decade, but he'd have to make do. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sunburned human male with facial hair concentrated primarily on his upper lip and chin. The cowboy hat sat at a jaunty angle on his head, and he was indeed clutching a metallic container labeled beer. "Woo-woo-ee-ee," the human shouted, causing several bridge officers to recoil in pain. "Why all are some funny-looking fellas. I'm Chad Wilson from Tallahassee, and this here's my gator, Chompy." The camera panned to show a terrifyingly large reptile wearing what appeared to be a small version of the cowboy hat. "Hello, Chad Wilson," Vex'lorr said carefully. "I am Commander Vex'lorr of the Galactic Confederation. You have entered restricted space. May I ask how you bypassed our defensive grid?" Chad took a long swig from his container. "Defensive what now?" "I just pointed my rig toward the shiny moon and floored it. I've been working on this beauty for about 8 years in my backyard. NASA kept rejecting my application. So I figured I'd show them pencil pushers what a real American can do with a nuclear reactor from eBay and some good old ingenuity." Vex'lorr's translator struggled with several of these concepts. "You acquired a nuclear reactor through an online marketplace?" he asked incredulously. Well, the ad said Soviet submarine parts, slightly used. Turns out it was the real deal. My cousin Joey helped me hook it up. He worked at the nuclear plant before that unfortunate incident with the cooling tower and the fireworks. Chad grinned widely. Cost me my trailer park security deposit, but worth every penny. Vex'lorr signaled frantically to his science officer to begin scanning Earth for signs of radiological disaster. "And your mission here is?" Vex'lorr prompted, dreading the answer. "Fishing trip," Chad exclaimed, holding up a comically large fishing rod. "Heard from this conspiracy podcast that Europa's got oceans under the ice. Figured the fish down there ain't never seen a lure before. Gonna catch me a space base. Maybe start the first interplanetary fishing charter. Chad's cosmic catches has a nice ring to it, don't ya think?" Vex'lorr fought the urge to authorize the immediate destruction of the craft. The Confederation's first contact protocols were clear. Peaceful dialogue must be attempted before any hostile action. "Mr. Wilson," he said with forced calm, "Europa is a protected celestial body. We have a research station studying indigenous life forms. Your presence could contaminate." "Indigenous life forms?" Chad bellowed excitedly. "Hot damn. Alien fish. Chompy, did ya hear that, buddy? We're gonna need a bigger cooler." The alligator made a grunting noise that Vex'lorr found deeply unsettling. "No, you misunderstand. You cannot fish here. These life forms are microscopic and scientifically precious." Chad looked disappointed for approximately 2.3 seconds before brightening again. "Well, shoot. What about Jupiter? Anything bitey in those clouds? I brought my heavy-duty rig too." Before Vex'lorr could explain that Jupiter was a gas giant with crushing pressure and deadly storms, his tactical officer interrupted. "Sir, the human craft is changing course. It appears to be attempting to land directly on our research dome." "Evasive action," Vex'lorr shouted. "Activate deflector shields." "Can't, sir," the tactical officer replied. "They're offline for the scheduled maintenance you approved last week." "What? Who schedules shield maintenance in an active system?" "You did, sir. You said, and I quote, 'Nothing ever happens in this boring outpost anyway.'" Vex'lorr made a mental note to demote himself when this was over. On screen, Chad was struggling with his controls. "Hoa there, Nelly. These brakes ain't what they used to be. Hey, purple tentacle fella, might want to clear the landing pad. Chompy, secure the beer cooler." "We don't have a landing pad," Vex'lorr screamed. The screen went blank as alarms blared across the bridge. "Impact in 10 seconds, announced the computer with inappropriate serenity. Vex'lorr closed all 4 eyes and began reciting the prayer of ancestral mercy, only to be interrupted by the tactical officer. "Sir, the human craft has deployed some kind of inflatable device. It appears to be bouncing off our dome." The view screen showed Chad's spacecraft, now surrounded by what looked like enormous white cushions, bouncing harmlessly across the surface of their research dome. "Ain't my first rodeo." Chad's voice came through the comms. "NASA keeps their fancy spaceship plans locked up tight, but the bounce house rental place in my neighborhood don't even have a password on their Wi-Fi. These bad boys are filled with a helium aerogel mix I cooked up in my garage. Against all odds and laws of physics, the Yeehaw Europa Express slowed to a gentle stop, perched precariously on the edge of the research dome." Vex'lorr stared in disbelief. "Get me a security team out there immediately. And someone contact Galactic Headquarters. I believe we have officially made first contact with humanity, and it's going very, very badly." 20 minutes later, Vex'lorr stood in the station's airlock chamber, surrounded by his heavily armed security team. The inner door opened to reveal Chad Wilson, still wearing his cowboy hat, but now encased in what appeared to be a homemade spacesuit constructed from wetsuit material, duct tape. And was that a fishbowl over his head? "Howdy, partners," Chad said, his voice slightly muffled by his improvised helmet. Sweet setup why all got here. Much nicer than my craft, though I'm proud of the cup holders I installed. They're real mahogany. Behind him, impossibly, stood the alligator, also wearing what looked like a custom-made reptile spacesuit with 4 leg holes and a long tail section. How are you breathing? Vex'lorr couldn't help but ask. Chad tapped his fishbowl helmet proudly. Got me one of them fancy oxygen concentrators from my grandma's retirement home. Modified it a bit with some scuba gear parts. Works like a charm. He paused to take a labored breath, most of the time. And the creature? Vex'lorr pointed to the alligator. Chompy? He can hold his breath for like, super long. Plus I got him this special suit with an air hose connected to mine. We share. That's the Wilson family way. Share and share alike, except fishing spots and lottery tickets. Vex'lorr signaled to his security chief. Please escort our guests to the containment chamber while I consult with Galactic headquarters. Containment chamber? Chad's eyes widened behind his fishbowl. That sounds like alien for jail. Now look here, purple fella. I'm just an honest fisherman looking to expand my horizons. No need to get all Area 51 on me. It's merely a protocol, Vex'lorr assured him. We need to assess the diplomatic implications of your arrival. Well, all right then. But Chompy gets anxious in confined spaces. Makes him bitey, if you catch my drift. The security team exchanged nervous glances as they led Chad and his alligator companion away. Vex'lorr retreated to his private office and activated the quantum communicator, dreading the conversation to come. Admiral Zloop's holographic form materialized, 7 eyes blinking in sequence as per military protocol. Commander Vex'lorr, explain this emergency broadcast. Our sensors detected an unauthorized craft at your location. Admiral, I regret to inform you that we have experienced first contact with a human. Zloop's speaking tentacle curled in alarm. Impossible. Our calculations predicted first contact in 2035 at the earliest. The humans barely have functioning spacecraft beyond their orbit. This human appears to be an outlier, sir. He constructed his own vessel using unconventional methods. Threat assessment? Vex'lorr hesitated. Uncertain, sir. The human shows no obvious hostile intent, but demonstrates alarming levels of resourcefulness combined with a complete disregard for safety, physics, and common sense. He also brought an apex predator as a companion. Admiral Zloop's hologram flickered as he processed this information. The High Council must be informed immediately. In the meantime, keep this human contained and learn what you can. If others follow his example, our entire observation operation could be compromised. And if he requests to return to Earth, sir? Absolutely not. We cannot risk him revealing our presence. The human must remain at the Europa station until the Council determines next steps. After the Admiral's hologram disappeared, Vex'lorr slouched in his chair, all 4 arms limp with stress. How would he explain to this Chad that he might never see his home planet again? And more pressingly, what would they feed the alligator? The station's AI interrupted his thoughts. Commander, there's a situation in the containment chamber. The human is attempting to fish in the hydroponics tank. Vex'lorr's head thudded against his desk. This was going to be a very long assignment. When he arrived at the containment chamber, Vex'lorr found Chad dangling his oversized fishing rod into the station's primary hydroponics tank, which supplied 60% of their oxygen and fresh food. Mr. Wilson, what are you doing? He demanded. Chad looked up with an innocent expression. Just trying to catch dinner. Promised Chompy some fresh fish. Say, these pink swimming things with the tentacles, they edible. Vex'lorr lunged for the fishing rod. Those are Jovian cephalopods. They're critically endangered and part of our xenobiology research. They sure are feisty, Chad said admiringly as his line jerked. Got a real nice fight to him. Security. Vex'lorr bellowed. Remove that fishing equipment immediately. As two guards cautiously approached, the alligator Chompy emitted a low, warning hiss. They froze in place. Chad finally seemed to notice the tension. Oh, don't mind Chompy. He's a sweetheart once you get to know him. Here, I'll show you the proper way to approach him. Before anyone could stop him, Chad pulled a package from his suit pocket and tore it open, revealing what looked like dried meat strips. Beef jerky, he explained, Chompy's favorite. Always pack snacks for space travel. That's rule number 3 in the Chad Wilson Guide to DIY Astronauting. I hesitate to ask, but what are rules 1 and 2? Vex'lorr found himself saying. Rule 1, if NASA says you can't, that just means you ain't tried hard enough yet. Chad grinned widely. Rule 2, duct tape fixes everything, even vacuum leaks. Vex'lorr felt a new migraine beginning. Mr. Wilson, I need to inform you of a diplomatic development. Our leadership has decided that you should remain here as our guest for the foreseeable future. Chad stopped mid-jerky toss. Come again? Your presence here represents a significant advancement in our expected timeline for human contact. We need to assess the situation carefully before determining next steps. You're saying I can't go home? Chad's sunburnt face reddened further. No can do, space buddy. I got a base fishing tournament next Saturday. Plus, who's gonna feed my other gators? I got 17 of EM back home. I'm afraid it's not negotiable at this time, Vex'lorr said firmly. Think of yourself as an ambassador for your species. Chad scratched his chin thoughtfully. Ambassador Chad has a nice ring to it, but I can't leave Tallahassee for too long. The neighbors already think I'm running a meth lab in my garage. If I disappear, they might call the cops, and then who knows what they'll make of my uranium stockpile. Vex'lorr felt faint. You're what? Just kidding about that last part. Chad winked unconvincingly. But seriously, I got responsibilities. My mama expects me for Sunday dinner, and she makes the best gator gumbo this side of the Mississippi. Before Vex'lorr could respond, the station's alarm system activated, red lights flashing throughout the compound. Our commander. His tactical officer's voice came through the comm system. We're detecting another craft approaching Europa. It's another human vessel. Another human vessel. Vex'lorr's antennae shot straight up in alarm. That's impossible. One human stumbling onto us is a statistical anomaly. 2 is. A pattern, his tactical officer finished grimly. And sir, this one appears to be better constructed. Chad perked up immediately. Well, hot damn. Must be NASA finally figured out I was onto something. Told them about my Europa fishing expedition plans at the county fair last year. They laughed, but I bet they've been working on their own version ever since. Vex'lorr rushed back to the command center, with Chad and Chompy waddling behind in their makeshift spacesuits. The main view screen showed a sleek, professional-looking spacecraft approaching Europa at a controlled speed. This craft appears to be using conventional human propulsion systems, reported Science Officer Quintalk. But it's far more advanced than anything in our database of Earth technology. On screen, Vex'lorr ordered, dreading what new human madness awaited him. The view screen flickered, revealing a human female with short red hair and a stern expression. Unlike Chad, she wore what appeared to be a proper spacesuit, albeit with a patch that read Private Aerospace Solutions instead of any government insignia. This is Dr. Rebecca Hammond of Prometheus Enterprises, she announced crisply. I'm tracking an unauthorized launch from Florida. Our sensors indicate the craft landed in this vicinity. Please identify yourselves. Before Vex'lorr could formulate a diplomatic response, Chad pushed forward into the camera's view. Becky Hammond? No way. We went to high school together. Remember me? Chad Wilson. I sat behind you in chemistry until that small explosion got me moved to the back of the class. The woman's professional demeanor cracked slightly, her eyes widening in recognition, and then narrowing in what Vex'lorr's human emotion database identified as exasperated disbelief. Chad Wilson? She echoed. You're the unauthorized launch? The Air Force has been tracking your heat signature for days. Half of NASA thinks it's a Russian spy satellite, and the other half is betting on aliens. Her gaze shifted to Vex'lorr, which apparently was closer to the truth. Vex'lorr stepped forward with as much dignity as he could muster. I am Commander Vex'lorr of the Galactic Confederation Research Division. Our presence here was meant to remain undetected until your species achieved greater technological maturity. And then this guy shows up, Rebecca said, gesturing toward Chad. Sounds about right. He once built a jet ski out of lawnmower parts and an industrial fan for our senior prank. Flooded the entire first floor of the school. It was a sweet ride, though, Chad interjected proudly. Rebecca ignored him. Commander, I represent a private aerospace company. We've been tracking unusual energy signatures around Europa for years. We suspected there might be non-terrestrial activity here. You knew about us? Vex'lorr asked, alarmed. We had theories. Nothing concrete until Chad's ridiculous launch gave us the perfect cover to follow and investigate. She smiled thinly. Thank you for confirming our suspicions. Chad beamed. Always happy to help. Say, Becky, you remember Chompy. He pulled the alligator into view. Rebecca's eyes widened again. That's the same alligator that you brought to prom? Sure is. They live a long time with proper care and affection. Show her your trick, Chompy. The alligator opened its massive jaws, revealing rows of terrifying teeth, then snapped them shut with a sound that made several bridge officers dive under their consoles. Impressive, Rebecca said dryly. Commander Vex'lorr, I need to land and discuss this situation. I assume that since Chad is still alive, you're not immediately hostile to humans. Vex'lorr hesitated. One human was already a diplomatic nightmare. Two might be manageable, especially if this one possessed actual intelligence. But allowing a representative of a human corporation to document their research station. The High Council would have his tentacles for breakfast. Permission granted, he said finally. But I must insist that no recording devices or weapons be brought aboard. And this encounter must remain confidential. Rebecca nodded. Agreed for now. Though I should warn you that my company's rescue shuttle is about 30 minutes behind me. When I didn't check in after tracking Chad's craft, they dispatched backup. Vex'lorr felt his life force draining away. How many humans are on this rescue shuttle? Just a pilot and my research assistant. But they're armed and will be considerably less diplomatic if they suspect I've been captured. Land immediately, Vex'lorr ordered. We'll sort this out before they arrive. 20 minutes later, Rebecca stood in the station's conference room, examining the alien technology with undisguised fascination while Vex'lorr explained the Galactic Confederation's mission on Europa. So you're basically just studying the local microbes? She asked, looking somewhat disappointed. No plans for invasion or resource extraction? Of course not, Vex'lorr replied, offended. The Confederation adheres to strict non-interference protocols with developing worlds. We're scientists, not conquerors. Chad, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. But why all must have some sweet fishing spots you know about, right? Like somewhere in the galaxy with fish that big? He spread his arms wide. Both Rebecca and Vex'lorr ignored him. The problem, Vex'lorr continued, is that your arrival compromises centuries of careful observation. Our protocols dictate that once a species discovers us prematurely, we must either implement full quarantine or accelerate the integration timeline. Meaning? Rebecca prompted. meaning either we erase all knowledge of our existence from the minds of all humans involved, or we formally introduce ourselves to your world governments decades ahead of schedule. Chad whistled. Mind erasing? That's some Men in Black stuff right there. Do I all have those flashy things too? Rebecca shot him a glare before turning back to Vex'lorr. Neither option seems ideal. Perhaps we could propose a third alternative. Before she could elaborate, the station's AI announced, Commander, the second human vessel is requesting docking clearance. They are threatening to breach and clear if their pilot is not allowed communication with Dr. Hammond within 5 minutes. Let me talk to them, Rebecca said quickly. I can explain we're in peaceful negotiations. Vex'lorr reluctantly authorized the communication link. Rebecca's face appeared on the main screen, with the research station visible behind her. Jake, this is Rebecca. Stand down. I'm fine, and we've made first contact with an alien research team. No hostile action. I repeat, no hostile action. A male voice responded skeptically. You sure you're not under duress, Dr. Hammond? Blink twice if aliens are controlling your mind. Nobody's controlling my mind, Rebecca sighed. Though I am questioning my career choices after finding out Chad Wilson beat us to first contact. Wait, Florida man Chad? The guy who tried to jet ski across Lake Okeechobee during a hurricane? Almost made it too, Chad shouted from across the room. That's him, Rebecca confirmed. Look, dock peacefully and join us. No weapons. This is a scientific research station, not a military base. After the communication ended, Vex'lorr slumped in his chair. The High Council is going to demote me to algae scrubber for this breach. Rebecca tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the conference table. Not necessarily. What if we framed this as a controlled introduction? A pilot program for Human Confederation relations? Vex'lorr's antennae perked up slightly. Elaborate. Prometheus Enterprises has government contracts but operates independently. We could establish a limited information exchange with your research team without involving world governments directly. A soft disclosure, if you will. And what would your company gain from this arrangement? Vex'lorr asked suspiciously. Rebecca smiled. Access to non-weaponizable alien technology would put us years ahead of our competitors. We're particularly interested in your sustainable energy systems and biomedical research. Boring, Chad interrupted, spinning in his chair. Why all are missing the bigger picture here? Interstellar fishing charters. I'm talking luxury trips to the best fishing spots in the galaxy. Humans would pay big money for that. Vex'lorr and Rebecca exchanged a look that transcended species barriers, the universal expression of "Can you believe this guy?" Mr. Wilson, Vex'lorr said carefully, while I admire your entrepreneurial spirit, I'm not sure recreational fishing is the basis for interspecies cooperation the Confederation had in mind. Shows what you know, Chad replied, undeterred. Wars have been fought over fishing rights, but sharing good fishing holes, that brings folks together. Plus, I bet there are space fish out there that would put our Earth ones to shame. Am I right? Vex'lorr hesitated. Well, there are the crystalline leviathans of Proxima Centauri's oceans. Chad's eyes lit up. Crystalline leviathans? That sounds awesome. How big we talking? Approximately the size of your Earth whales, Vex'lorr admitted reluctantly. They're protected, of course. Catch and release only. I get it, Chad nodded sagely. Conservation is important. I release at least half the gators I wrestle. Before this bizarre conversation could continue, the station's security chief announced the arrival of the second human shuttle. Jake Peterson, Rebecca's assistant, turned out to be a serious young man with military posture and suspicious eyes that constantly scanned the alien surroundings. Dr. Hammond, he said tersely after being briefed, I strongly advise against any agreement without proper governmental oversight. This is far beyond our mission parameters. Rebecca waved away his concerns. Our mission parameters included confirming extraterrestrial activity, which we've done. Now we're improvising. Like jazz. Chad added helpfully, now attempting to teach Chompy how to spin in a zero-gravity chamber adjacent to the conference room. Vex'lorr watched the alligator floating gracefully through the air and wondered if retirement was an option. Perhaps we should contact Admiral Zloop again. This situation has evolved. No, all three humans said simultaneously, surprising everyone including themselves. More bureaucracy will just complicate things, Rebecca explained quickly. Let's draft a preliminary agreement between your research station and Prometheus. A proof of concept for more formal relations later. Yeah, Chad agreed enthusiastically. Keep it simple. Like when I rewired my house. Didn't bother with permits or fancy electricians. Just watched some videos online and went for it. Didn't your house burn down last year? Rebecca asked. Only half of it, Chad corrected, and that was probably unrelated. Jake looked increasingly alarmed. Dr. Hammond, we cannot seriously consider drafting interspecies agreements with input from him. He jerked a thumb toward Chad, who was now attempting to feed Chompy something he'd found in the alien food synthesizer. Actually, Vexlorr said thoughtfully, perhaps Mr. Wilson's approach has merit, if not his specific suggestions. A simple exchange program between your company and our research station could serve as a test case without involving higher authorities immediately. Rebecca nodded eagerly. Exactly. We provide cover for your continued research. You share non-sensitive scientific data. Win-win. And fishing trips. Chad insisted. We'll discuss recreational activities later, Vex'lorr said diplomatically. As they began drafting the agreement, the station's alarms suddenly blared again. Oh, what now? Vex'lorr groaned. His tactical officer's voice came through with barely contained panic. Sir, we're detecting multiple spacecraft entering Jupiter's orbit. They appear to be, sir. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. They're identifying themselves as news media from Earth. Rebecca and Jake exchanged horrified looks. How did they track us? Jake demanded. Chad cleared his throat awkwardly. So, funny story, I might have been live streaming this whole adventure to my Florida Man Adventures channel. You what? Rebecca, Jake, and Vex'lorr shouted in unison. Chad held up a small device attached to his makeshift spacesuit. Got over 1 million followers now. Been broadcasting since launch. The comments section is going crazy about you purple guys. Well, Vex'lorr stared at the device in horror. You've been transmitting our research station to your entire planet? Well, not the entire planet, Chad said reasonably. Just the folks who follow Florida Man Adventures. Though I guess it probably got shared once the alien stuff started. My analytics are showing unprecedented engagement. Rebecca put her head in her hands. So much for controlled disclosure. The view screen suddenly lit up with incoming transmission requests from various Earth media outlets, CNN, BBC, even something called TikTok News Network. Commander, the station AI announced, we're also receiving communications from multiple Earth governments demanding explanations. The United Nations Security Council has convened an emergency session. Vex'lorr looked at the humans, Rebecca's face locked in a grimace of professional disaster, Jake looking like he might be sick in his helmet, and Chad grinning from ear to ear with Chompy floating beside him, both seemingly delighted by the chaos they'd caused. Well, Vex'lorr said with surprising calm, I believe this qualifies as what humans call a diplomatic incident. Nah, Chad replied cheerfully. In Florida, we just call this Tuesday. As if to punctuate his statement, Chompy chose that moment to catch a floating piece of alien food, his massive jaws snapping shut with a sound that echoed throughout the station. Vex'lorr made a decision. Connect me to Admiral Zloop and the High Council. It seems the timeline for human integration has been significantly accelerated. Sorry about that, Chad said, not looking sorry at all. If it helps, I'll put in a good word for you with my followers. Commander Purple Tentacles is cool. Why all 5 stars would visit his space station again. Rebecca looked at Vex'lorr with genuine sympathy. For what it's worth, most humans aren't like him. Thank the cosmic forces for that, Vex'lorr replied fervently. As the communications officer established links with both Earth authorities and Confederation leadership, Vex'lorr found himself wondering if perhaps this chaotic introduction was somehow fitting. Humans, from what he'd observed so far, were nothing if not unpredictable. On the bright side, Chad offered, floating upside down now, this'll be great for tourism. Jupiter's Europa, home of the first intergalactic fishing charter and alien research center. We'll make t-shirts. I'm definitely getting fired, Vex'lorr muttered. Fired? Chad laughed. Buddy, where I come from, you're about to be famous. And in Florida, that's practically better than being competent. As the view screen filled with the stern faces of the Galactic High Council on one side and various confused Earth leaders on the other, Vex'lorr took a deep breath. Centuries of careful observation and non-interference protocols, undone by one human with a homemade rocket and an alligator. Greetings, he began formally to both groups. On behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I regret to inform you that first contact has occurred somewhat prematurely. Chad gave an enthusiastic thumbs up from behind the camera's view. Chompy snapped his jaws in what might have been agreement. However, Vex'lorr continued with newfound resolution. Perhaps it's time our civilizations met properly. Though I must warn Earth's representatives, he added, glancing at Chad, who was now attempting to take a selfie. With a very uncomfortable alien crew member, if this individual is representative of humanity's approach to interstellar relations, we all may need to adjust our expectations significantly. Chad Wilson, first human to make contact with alien life, responded to this historic moment by producing a can of beer from somewhere in his suit, cracking it open in zero gravity, and declaring, to new fishing buddies across the universe, Florida man has arrived in space, y'all. And the galaxy ain't never gonna be the same. For once, Vex'lorr found himself in complete agreement with a human assessment. The galaxy indeed would never be the same again.